If your blood runs orange and blue, this is the pod for you. You're listening to Orange and Blue Bloods, hosted by EJ Stewart and Tommy Beer. Let's get to it, New York.
The ping pong bongs don't swing our way. What else is new? This is Orange and Blue Bloods, a New York Knicks podcast, Audacy WFAN original. I'm EJ Stewart, joined by Tommy Beer. We got plenty to talk about on this episode. We'll be talking about the NBA draft lottery results. The Knicks came in with a slim chance of maybe leaving the draft lottery with a first-round pick, but due to the way the ping pong ball swung, Dallas Mavericks got to keep their pick, which was owed to the Knicks via the Kristaps Porzingis trade. So the Knicks, not having been awarded a first-round pick from the lottery, now do not have a draft pick coming into this year's 2023 NBA draft. So we'll talk about the ramifications of that. We'll also talk about some interesting reporting about the future of Mitchell Robinson and some interesting reporting from NBA writer Sean Devaney of Heavy.com regarding how at least one Eastern Conference general manager sees the way the Knicks may approach this offseason when it comes to potentially shopping Mitchell Robinson. And I think we got to get into the Ja Morant situation. Ja Morant now suspended yet again. We talked about it when he had the first suspension. We had the first incident with the guns. He had another incident this past weekend. He is now suspended pending a league investigation. Adam Silver has talked about it. He's not very happy with how things have gone down. Ja Morant releasing a statement. And I think it's a good time to probably do a true kind of look back and wonder if the Knicks perhaps maybe were lucky not to have landed a top 2 pick in that draft in 2019. So plenty to get to on this episode. Again, my guy Tommy is here. Tommy, was it weird to watch Eastern Conference playoff basketball and see that the Knicks were not a part of it as the Heat and Celtics battle in Game 1 with the Heat winning on the road?
Maybe those Heat are a pretty good team, huh, EJ?
Yeah.
We tend to not, believe our eyes, for a while, but they look pretty good against the Bucks and they looked good against the Knicks and they outclassed the Celtics last night. It looks like the Heat could be incredibly on their way to another final. But yeah, it's a little bit of a first week without Knicks basketball, but still plenty to talk about, my friend. So let's get into it.
Yeah, let's get into it. So yes, it is Orange and Blue Bloods, New York Knicks podcast, Audacy WFAN original, a podcast you can get wherever you get your podcasts, including the free Audacy app. Make sure you hit the auto download feature on your streaming service to get these episodes every time we drop. Also, be sure to check us out on YouTube. You can find us on the Audacy Sports channel and the WFAN channel. So let's begin with the draft lottery. So the Knicks will go into this year's NBA draft without a draft pick in either the first or second round. There was a chance the Knicks, again, would be selecting the lottery had the Dallas Mavericks pick landed outside of the top 10. The Knicks had secured a top 10 protected pick from the Mavericks thanks to the Kristaps Porzingis trade. However, Dallas landed the 10th spot on Tuesday, so the Knicks pick from the Mavs now gets deferred to next season as a top 10 protected pick. The Knicks sent their own pick, which was slotted now at 23 after the results of this past regular season. That pick was sent to Portland in the Josh Hart trade earlier this year. So, Tommy, when it comes to this draft lottery, I want to begin with the fact that Dallas Mavericks got to keep their pick. I don't know. I'm sitting there, I'm watching the draft. I see, I guess with Nico Harrison, I think was up there. And then that pick goes to 11, and I see it's not Dallas or the Knicks or whoever they would have put on the graphic. And I got sent back to that end of the regular season where the Dallas Mavericks, who were in position to make the play-in potentially had they played out the string, essentially quit on the season and it kind of secured themselves a spot in that top 10. And I still feel like the NBA should have voided that pick. I think that it's a disgrace that Dallas was able to earn a top 10 pick via that kind of nonsense that happened at the end of the season. Do you feel the NBA made a mistake with how that whole situation went down?
At the time, I didn't think so, and I think probably stripping them of a first-round pick would have been a little harsh. Obviously, there was the hefty fine. I'll just say this in terms of the big picture. You mentioned Nico Harrison was on the dais there. Where he wasn't was watching his team in the postseason, and
right.
This is something I've talked about, kind of over the last couple of weeks, and I thought it was kind of solidified and got some pushback from Mav fans, obviously, but the Heat and the Lakers are two of the final 4 teams. The Heat are now 3 games away from the finals after winning game 1. both of those teams had to survive the play-in tournament. They qualified for the play-in tournament that the Mavericks deemed unworthy of them, or not worth pursuing. And both of those two of the final four teams in the league, the Heat may go from the play-in tournament to the NBA Finals. You're telling me that. Listen, they had some breaks go their way. Giannis injures his back, but all things considered, they came together at the right time. They built some momentum. They got hot. They had a fortunate path, to the postseason, towards the playoff picture. You're trying to tell me that a team with Luka Doncic and a healthy Kyrie Irving couldn't have done the same? Listen, they were against the odds, but what happens if they play the Nuggets in round one and Jokic injures his ankle in game two and misses four playoff games? Like, all these things the odds are stacked against you, obviously. But the point is, when you have a generational talent like Luka Doncic and you trade a first-round pick a month before you decide to quit on the season for Kyrie Irving, who's hit some of the biggest, for all the foibles and flaws in Kyrie, we talked about him, put him in a playoff game, dude can score 35 and blindfolded. So for all those reasons, yes, the Mavs got to keep the 10th overall pick in a decent draft. It's a little bit top heavy. They didn't move up. They're not getting Wembanyama. They're not getting Scoot Henderson. They're not getting one of the Thompson brothers. So for all those things, I just think, if there's basketball gods and karma and all that stuff, how does Luka feel about his team forcing him to quit on him when they need him to re-sign a contract eventually somewhere down the road? What happens with Kyrie this summer? How do they kind of reconstruct that roster? Is the 10th overall pick going to make or break the future of the franchise? I don't know. I will just say that there's that. While some folks say, the Mavs have to be ecstatic they kept their 10th pick. Let's look at the big picture. Let's wait a couple of years and see how this all plays out. My thought at the time was it was a shameful, decision against the integrity of the sport. It was a bad decision from a franchise standpoint, even despite the fact that they kept their first round pick. Again, it's not like it transfers the two second rounders next year. The Knicks are still going to get the 18th overall pick, the 21st overall pick next season. Are you guaranteed that the 10th player picked in 2023 is better than the 23rd overall? There's a lot of variables there. So I just thought at the time, and I think just the fact that the Lakers and the Heat. Well, again, obviously the Lakers they were the first half of the season they played poorly. The trades kind of transferred things, but again, the opportunities you had a chance to get a ticket into the dance, and you quit on the season, and we'll see how it plays out.
Yeah, it is interesting how you got two play-in tournament teams first time to going this far into the playoffs, and now again you got the Heat 3 games away from the NBA Finals. And when you consider how great Jimmy Butler has played, the star player that he is, and how he's been able to carry his team throughout the postseason, you kind of wonder, the way Luka Doncic can get on the heater. Like, hey, couldn't he have maybe went on a run like that? Now for Dallas and where they would have been slotted, they would have been the 10th team or the 19th to get in. So they're seeing the Nuggets in the first round if they win. So are they beating the Nuggets in the first round? That might be a little bit of a tall task considering what we.
But I'll just say this, EJ. Did anyone on Earth have the Heat beating the Bucks in the first round?
Right, exactly. Nobody. Nobody. And the Heat are playing it. The Heat are in the conference finals, and what ESPN said they had a 3% chance to win. So even now they're still being discounted. So anything can happen once you get to the postseason. So that decision I think also was questionable. I don't know. I think to me, yes, some of it is spitefulness because the Knicks, I thought should have gotten a lottery pick this year, given how things worked out. Dallas had screwed themselves and put themselves in a position where they were not one of the worst 10 best teams really from this NBA season. And they kind of gamed the system to put themselves in that spot because they didn't want to lose a draft pick. A pick, like you said, they're going to lose most likely anyway. So for me, I just thought for the NBA standpoint, they should have sent a message. It should have been, hey, we're not going to allow a team to discount the play-in tournament the way the Dallas Mavericks did ever again. We're not going to allow teams to, finagle with lottery protections and the odds in this way ever again. And we're going to make sure that the integrity of the playoffs is untouched. So I thought there was a missed opportunity by the NBA. I think the fact that the NBA, had a fine for the Mavericks, and then we kind of all forgot about it. And to me, I kind of forgot about it until we got to that draft lottery on Tuesday, and I'm reminded, that the Knicks can get a top 10 pick or a top 11 to 14 pick, but it's going to take a lot of luck for that to happen, and that was, of course, because of the moves the Dallas Mavericks made at the end of the season. So the Knicks now come into this draft without a draft pick. Their second round pick they shipped out. I don't know, I forgot what trade it was, but they shipped that out. So they don't have a second round pick this year. First round pick that they have, their own, was sent in the Josh Hart trade. That is now the 23rd pick. Do you think the Knicks will regret coming into this draft without a draft pick? They were at the combine. I told Tom Thibodeau was at the combine yesterday on Wednesday.
I don't. I thought the Josh Hart trade was a brilliant trade. Obviously paid huge dividends for the Knicks over the second half of the season. First round against Cleveland. Hart didn't play as well against Miami, but he's a Knick. He's a Knick guy. Yeah. A perfect fit for the city, for the franchise. I shouldn't say there's no chance. There's very small chance that the player you pick at number 23 would have the type of career, let alone in the near future or down the road.
Impact, yeah.
As Josh Hart. So for that reason, and the other thing to remember is that the Knicks don't have a trade the Knicks don't have a draft pick as of today. They could easily buy their way into the second round. They could trade multiple second rounders for a first rounder this year. They could also, if they like, trade into the late first round. We've seen teams, essentially sell, late first rounders. The Knicks have multiple 7 first rounders over the next 11 years. They can trade, 2 future protected picks for one, or pick next year for the, one of the protected picks they have for a pick in the late 20s. And that's really where the Knicks have been successful. Emmanuel Quickly, 25th overall pick. Quentin Grimes, 25th overall pick. These were guys that kind of had lost their luster a little bit, weren't viewed as top tier blue chip prospects, despite their pedigree being, really high quality, highly rated high school players coming out of high school. Going to blue chip programs, playing for quality coaches that prepare you for the NBA, Kelvin Sampson, and obviously Quickly at Kentucky. So I have faith in the Knicks front office to make the right decision. If they are targeting a guy, late 20s, early 30s, early 20s even, I think they have the draft capital. They have the ammunition to get in there and get that player. And maybe somebody slips in the second round that they like. So the Knicks, Jericho Sims was the second to last pick of the second round. They can get easily get another late second rounder. So a lot of credit to the Knicks, front office and behind the scenes guys that have really done a solid job in terms of draft evaluation.
Yeah, I mean, I think I agree. First of all, when it comes to Josh Hart trade, and I know there are some fans that kind of saying, "Oh, well, was it worth trading for Josh Hart for that first round pick?" Yes. The short answer, yes. People asking questions. Yes, it was worth trading a first round pick to get Josh Hart, the 23rd pick in this draft. Not having that pick and having a guy who was able to contribute as much as they did, not only in the regular season, but remember also how he played in the first round of the playoffs. Yes, he didn't play well against the Heat, but the Knicks won a round in the playoffs for the first time in 8 years, or 10 years almost, in part because of how Josh Hart played. So you have to give him credit. You have to give Leon Rose credit for making a good move. Now, they got to sign him. Like, right. I think that's a big deal. Like, you got to be able to keep him. You don't want to necessarily lose a guy like Josh Hart and give up a first-round pick for essentially a 2-3 month rental. Right. But I would think the Knicks are smart enough to know that they're not going to allow that to happen. Like, they're not going to allow themselves to lose a first-round pick for a guy they only had for a couple of months. So if Josh Hart is signed for the next 3 or 4 years, which I think everybody is expecting, then no, I don't think you could look at this draft and say, oh, well, there was a lot of, guys that they could have got 23 that the Knicks will, desperately miss because they don't have Josh Hart. And you got to hope the Knicks actually pick the right guy. Like, I think that when you look at the drafts in recent years, the Knicks have actually been one of the few teams that have actually hit on some of these late first-round picks. A lot of these drafts have been kind of very hit or miss over the last several years, especially when you get beyond kind of the top 15. So the chances that you actually get a guy who can come in and contribute and play at a high level and be as solid as Josh Hart is very slim. It's got to be real. It's a very slim chance. So I have no problem with the Knicks not having a first round pick this year. Is it annoying? I mean, a little bit. I love the NBA draft. As you know, I do a bunch of draft coverage, and I follow these guys all year. So the fact that, as of right now, it's hard for me to really speak about players with the Knicks in this draft because they don't have a pick. I know there have been guys who've interviewed with the Knicks. Austin Jackson of UConn said he interviewed with Knicks. So Knicks are talking to people. So if they like a guy, they'll go see if they can try to get him. But I can't sit here and say, oh, well, they've made a crucial error coming into this draft without a draft pick.
Agreed. Yeah. Again, good point, though. I should have mentioned as well. They got to lock up Josh Hart this summer, and I think they will. But that is an important factor in the equation.
So the way this lottery played out, you had the San Antonio Spurs coming away with the number 1 pick, which will almost all but certainly be Victor Wembanyama, the 7'5" forward/center out of France, who definitely the biggest prospect and the best prospect to come into the draft since LeBron James. Some will say, and I would agree with them, maybe the best prospect beyond even LeBron James. That's how impressive this kid is. 7'5", can shoot the 3 ball, can handle like a guard. I mean, I've never seen a player like Victor Wembanyama. So you have him likely on number 1. Then the way the lottery slided out, the top 4 picks, Charlotte got the 2nd pick, Portland got the 3rd pick, and then the 4th. Portland got the 3rd pick, and the 4th pick went to the Houston Rockets. The way the lottery played out, do you think there's an opportunity for the Knicks to maybe make a blockbuster trade that could get themselves into this lottery, given how some of these players shook out? I think a lot of people I've seen talking about Portland and saying, hey, that's a team that needs some help immediately, you would think, if they're trying to keep Dame Lillard around. I don't know why they'd want to do that, but they have a weird relationship between the Blazers and Dame, a lot of loyalty there. So could the Knicks be interested in maybe getting into that lottery and maybe offloading one of their, ace guys, Julius Randle potentially in a deal like that? Do you see a blockbuster potentially, given how the lottery results shook out for the Knicks?
Yeah, I obviously think it's highly unlikely, but if there's one spot, and people have mentioned, as you mentioned, that Portland is the place, it sounds like they're, at the very least, going to let it be known that they will listen to offers for the number 3 pick. And again, it seems like we've been here last offseason, the offseason before, the offseason prior to that. Do they build around Dame? Can they build a championship team with Dame? Should they unload Dame? And, you would think this would kind of be a pivot point for the franchise. Listen, you'd sit down with Lillard and say, look, we love you. We love your loyalty.
Yeah.
We're loyal to you as well. But it's probably best for the franchise and the player to part ways now. We have this top 3 pick, whether it's Scoot Henderson, whether it's Brandon Miller. We'll get one of those guys, build around them, Anthony Simons, and some other Shadon Sharp, and then Dame will ship you out for multiple first-round picks or a young player that's on the same timeline as these young guys. Is Lillard willing to do that? Is that something they're interested in? If not, then I guess you have to consider trading that number 3 pick for somebody that's going to help you right now if you don't feel like Henderson or one of the other guys that you're going to bring in. They obviously have a loaded backcourt with Simons and Lillard. So maybe the wing is the guy they go for. We'll see how it plays out, but I think that's certainly a conversation worth having. And we'll see if there's some smoke or some fire in the days, weeks leading up to the draft.
Yeah, I mean, I think that Portland situation is something to follow. I think that the Blazers are a team that is in a bit of a crossroads. Like, they got to make a decision this season, like to go another season not doing anything significant. And I'll say this, I actually did like their moves last offseason. I thought bringing Jeremy Grant was a good move. I thought that they did a good job of improving the athletic profile of the team. They were a very unathletic team the last 2 or 3 years. So I thought they made the right tweaks to try to make them a compelling team this year, a team that maybe could surprise people. It just did not work out. Injuries didn't go in their favor as well. So now you're coming to another season. Dame is a year older. They got to do something. So whether it is trading for stars or whether it's saying, okay, the full rebuild is begun and we're going to ship Dame out of here, one of those decisions has to be made. And I think if they do decide we're going to try to use this number 3 pick for a star, I would be almost stunned that they didn't call the Knicks about Julius Randle. Like, just to me, like the ability to get a 25 and 10 guy who is on a really good contract, who it has this kind of weird relationship with the fan base in the city. I've always felt that like Julius Randle doesn't necessarily love being a Knick. I think that he would be totally fine if he ever got traded. I think he likes Tom Thibodeau. I think he likes Leon Rose and Worldwide West. I think he loves James Dolan. I don't think he loves everything that comes with being a Knick and the Knick fans and things like that. So I would be surprised if Portland didn't at least call the Knicks.
I'd like a head coach if he let me do whatever I wanted to do and quit.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
But yeah, listen, that's the thing we've talked about with the team. If you're the Knicks, you hope a team falls in love with the regular season Julius Randle, and
Right.
there's reasons, and we've talked about it. There's reasons that this player has value. Really, relative somewhere between a really good and a great contract in terms of value. 50th overall player, one of the All NBA player, making 50th in the league in terms of annual salary. And then you have Dame, so you don't have to worry about the postseason. So that's the kind of
that's a good point. Yeah, so like that fit just always, and that's why it was talked about last offseason. I think Randle was such a bad year that the Blazers weren't interested, and that's why they went to Jeremy Grant. And I think they will probably be talked about again. I think from a Knicks standpoint, it would have to take, well, number one, you got to take salary back. So who are you getting back in the deal from Portland? That would be the question.
What I was thinking was this sign and trade with Jeremy Grant.
Sign with Jeremy Grant, right?
I mean, that would just be perfect because then you get Grant, who's a stretch four, really talented, underrated player.
Yes.
And the pick, and if Blazers feel like they're going to lose Grant anyway, then maybe. And again, the thing with you're looking for a team that can focus on the regular season, Randall, because they want to get to the playoffs. The Blazers are. It's not like championship or bust. They want to. They were obviously in the the lottery team this year. You get a guy that gives you 25, 10, and 5 on a nightly basis, get you to the regular season, and then he'll fall in line behind Dame. Dame is the alpha. He's the guy in the postseason. There's no question about it. And Randall can just kind of chip in and fill in, in the postseason. And let Dame take all the big shots. So I think there's some interest there. I think it would make sense for both sides.
Yeah. It's there's a framework there. I think it becomes complicated. I think when it comes to what a deal for Grant becomes, like what kind of contract he gets, because I would think that if you're making this trade, you're trying to start Obi Toppin. And so if you're bringing in Grant, how much money are you paying for kind of a 6-man backup combo forward, because I'm sure he'd want what he's worth, and he's averaged to over 20 points last few seasons.
No, he's a starter. My thought was that my thought process was maybe you send Obi elsewhere in like as part of a 3-team deal. Because again, if you bring in Grant, that means you're signing him to a long-term. I assume you're signing to like 3 or 4 year deal.
Yeah.
And you're gonna have to make a decision on Obi soon, so maybe you kind of cut the cord now.
Yeah, and then you have the number 3 pick, and I think what happens in the draft will also probably be determinative as well, because it's who's available, what player makes sense. I mean, now I think that some of these guys, the Knicks are in a good position because this is a top heavy draft. So let's say you do say, okay, we're gonna send Obi Toppin out. Well, maybe a kid like Jarvis Walker from Houston makes sense. He's a physical combo forward, really good defender, really good athlete, improving shooter. Maybe it's a Cam Whitmore from Villanova, another combo forward, more of a 3, but can play some small ball 4. Like I think of course, if Brandon Miller slides to you at 3, then now you got a 6'9" lethal shooter. So I also am curious what player would make sense for the Knicks at 3 to essentially accept your probably slight downgrade from Julius Randle to Jeremy Grant. That I think would be an interesting thing to follow.
Just personally for you, roster fit, everything. You're starting a franchise from scratch. You have nobody on your roster. After Wembanyama, do you have Henderson or Miller or Thompson or somebody else? What's your?
I have Scoot too. I know Brandon Miller is kind of leaked for a lot of people. Some people he's slid because of the gun stuff with in Alabama, but I'd have Scoot still 2. I think Brandon Miller is 3. And that 4th spot I think is interesting. I mean, I really liked Walker from Houston. I know the Thompson twins are crazy athletic. Amin has had a great handle. He's a great passer. That's the shots for both of them are just. I'm very skeptical. It's gonna take a while, I think, for those guys are real players.
I agree with you.
Be able to score.
Right. I agree with you with Scoot at 2. I'm surprised so many people have Miller ahead of him. But do you think there's a big drop off between 3 and then everyone else. You know, the top
Yes. Yeah.
1, and 2, 3, and then everyone else.
Yeah, I think the top 3 guys. I think Wembanyama's in a class of his own. I think
Yes.
2 and 3. I think are fairly close between Scoot and Brandon Miller. I think once you
Okay.
get past 3, it is a drop off. I think
Gotcha.
that you can still get a good player. I
Yes.
really
Yeah.
like Anthony Black from Arkansas, and at Taylor Hendricks, I think maybe he's not necessarily a mystery guy anymore. I think a lot of people are realizing, hey, this guy maybe he needs to go in the top 5. But he's a guy in some ways. I've looked at him, and the Knicks did get a pick in the first round. I thought that maybe he would have been the perfect replacement for Obi Toppin, because essentially he is the player the Knicks are trying to make Obi Toppin into, this stress
Right.
four guy that stands in the corner who can shoot threes. So like they are good players. I just think when you get past 3, it's an entirely different draft.
I think this is one of those drafts where you ask 10 different GMs, you can have, somebody will have somebody at 4, somebody will have him at 8, somebody will have him at 6, somebody, like all those guys are I don't want to say interchangeable, but based on preference and roster composition, all that stuff.
And last thing quickly on the lottery, how do you expect the Wembanyama to Spurs fit to go?
I love it. Just as a basketball fan, obviously I'm rooting for Wembanyama. Fascinated to see how this thing plays out. I just, as you meant, I personally, I would have LeBron as a better prospect, in terms of, durability and just a higher floor and an insane ceiling. Guys, maybe the greatest player of all time, for those reasons, I thought he was a little, pre, the internet, I want to say pre-internet, but pre-social media age. Like you had to read about this guy in papers and watch a game every once in a while. Like there weren't as many highlights and stuff. All that said, I really like the fit in San Antonio. Obviously, Popovich has had success with French players, Tony Parker and Boris Diaw, and there's strong relationship there. And just the organization understands how to develop a young franchise altering talent, a big man. So I think it's a good fit. They're not going to push him too hard. They're going to give him, they're not worried about him, winning. He's going to win Rookie of the Year, all that other stuff. They're not going to force him to play 82 games and pack the house every night. Bring him along slowly and just kind of let him develop at his own pace.
Yeah, Spurs, man, they really, it's like some people, how did they get so lucky? I mean, you had David Robinson in 87, then Tim Duncan in 97, and then now with the Wembanyama in 2023. It's like, and all bigs too. It's like crazy. Like it's like as soon as I saw how the top 4 shook out with Spurs being in there, it just seemed like it made too much sense for him to be a Spur. And it was funny. I saw Fred Katz was in the room when the numbers are being drawn. He said that the Spurs not only won the first drawing, but then they got the next 2 drawings because there are a bunch of combinations that will come up a certain team. So they had to keep drawing to just get a team beyond the Spurs. So it seemed like it was destiny that the Spurs absolutely were going to get that number 1 pick. Some people would say something else, but I would say just destiny that they were going to get number 1 pick. Yeah, I think it's a great fit for Victor. It's interesting. I've been actually really critical of Greg Popovich and the Spurs front office because I think they've kind of run their organization into the ground really since the Kawhi Leonard trade. Like that trade wasn't good, and then a lot of the moves and draft picks they've made since then have not worked. So in some ways, this feels like a lifeline to them, and I think they're going to be having the last laugh because I think Wembanyama is the real deal. You can never really just look at health and you don't really know what's going to happen. You look at his body, you look at how tall he is, and you say, okay, there are obvious things that maybe come up as red flags, but this is a guy who played every game in his French league. Like this guy missed no games. He's been very durable early on in his career. So we'll see how it goes. And the only thing on the LeBron comparison, because I feel like people are like kind of missing the point where they say like best prospect. Because to me, I would agree that LeBron was more hyped because ESPN games, Sports Illustrated covers, things of that nature. But I think the way I'm viewing as best prospect is they're saying, okay, if LeBron James was in high school and this kid was playing at the same time LeBron James was playing, who would be number 1 pick? I think this kid would be the number 1 pick. Like I think that the 7'5" 3-point shooter with his crazy handle, the way he plays, like we've never seen. I think that LeBron would go number 2. That is, I think, the difference. I don't think that people think that there's more hype behind this kid regarding like the media attention. Or pressure even. But I think it's actual player.
Yeah, I personally would go LeBron. Listen, you can't go wrong either way. I just think the
Right.
combination of size, strength, passing ability. That's the thing.
I
I mean,
hear
you
you.
watch some of those highlights, like the way he sees the floor. He's a savant. Like he's a
Yeah.
basketball
Oh yeah.
genius. The likes of which we'll never see. And just the thing on Wembanyama that scares me, the history of players over 7'1", 7'2", 7'3", and foot
Yeah.
injuries and long term, that just scares me to death. So I hope that Wembanyama is the exception to the rule. There's never been a player that's been able to survive 5 years, 10 years in the NBA, let alone 20 like LeBron. And 20 is obviously LeBron's the outlier, but I just think, and he didn't know that going in, but I just thought LeBron was the best prize. The argument for Wembanyama is he doesn't have a single hole in his game. I mean, he can
Yeah.
shoot. LeBron wasn't a great shooter coming in. You felt he would work on it. Obviously, he's improved it, but you can't go wrong with either guy. Let's put it that way.
Absolutely. Spurs definitely lucking out with getting that number one pick. So let's just gears here and talk about the Ja Morant situation. So he's suspended again pending a league investigation after he was seen on Instagram live flashing what appeared to be a gun this past weekend. This is the second time Morant has been suspended for brandishing a gun on IG Live. He was suspended 8 games, suspended weekend at a Florida rehab facility after he streamed himself partying in a strip club while waving a gun outside of Denver in March. And now you have this recent incident where he's also seen on IG Live flashing a gun. Morant was the second pick in the 2019 NBA draft, one spot behind Pelicans forward Zion Williamson and one spot ahead of Knicks forward RJ Barrett. So I do want to ask you how you feel about what Ja's going through and how the NBA's got to handle it. But first, do you think that at this point, when we look at where the draft is, the Knicks were fortunate not to land one of those top 2 picks when it comes to Ja Morant and the issues that Zion Williamson's dealt with?
Yeah, listen, obviously it's tough to speculate. Would Zion stay healthy if he was a Knick? Would John Morant be in more trouble if he came to the Big Apple? Obviously there's a kid with terrible decision, his difficulty, issues with maturity,
Yeah.
decision making is awful, surrounding himself with the wrong people. So yeah, listen, from that respect, it's hindsight's 2020, but you have to be happy with the. I think that was one of the selling points for Barrett was, this is a kid that's his parents met at St. John's, has been in the spotlight all his life since high school, number
Yeah.
one rated, sophomore and junior, and national star for Canada, and he's really lived up to the hype and delivered since arriving. So there's a lot to like there, obviously.
Yeah, it's tough because we know, I mean, Zion and Ja Morant have more talent than RJ Barrett. That's
Yes.
without question. But it just seems like there's other things with these guys, and these guys, both of them, seem to be struggling with the pressure of what came with being the number 1, number 2 pick in that draft. So if you have that pressure in New Orleans and Memphis, what does that pressure look like in New York City with Knick
Hmm.
fans? Like that's a whole different deal. And you talk about Ja Morant coming to the Big Apple, and when you said that, the first thing I thought about are very different gun laws in New York. I mean,
Yeah,
is Ja
yeah,
Morant
yeah, yeah.
facing serious legal situations? Because if he really loves guns this much, and then he's a gun enthusiast or whatever he's going through, like, if he's doing this in New York,
Mhm.
are these investigations or are these things becoming a lot bigger than they already are? For Ja in Memphis and wherever he's been, Colorado was other state where he was shown flashing a gun. So that becomes an interesting thing as well.
True.
I think that at this point, I can't look at that draft right now and say, oh, like the Knicks really missed
Right.
out, and I really wish they would have gotten number 2. Maybe that was true, and maybe it will be true. Those guys still have plenty of career ahead of them, you would hope. But right now, today, like I don't necessarily feel like I'm clamoring to have Ja or Zion Williamson at the face of my franchise right now.
And the other thing
Be
is,
honest,
listen, when Porzingis, then it was viewed as a 3-player draft, and the Porzingis draft,
right?
with D'Angelo Russell and Karl Anthony Towns and Okafor. Everyone thought
Yep,
Okafor was going to be a stud, and
I
Porzingis,
thought he was doing great.
so it just goes to show it's an inexact science, to say the least.
How do you think the NBA handles the job suspension or how this whole thing plays out?
I think they come down heavy, and I think they
Mm,
should. I thought they gave him kind of the benefit of the doubt and said, "Listen, we'll give you one more chance," and he blew that chance. A few months later, a few things, which all can be true. Um, I think, let's keep the person in mind. I understand
yeah,
the anger at Ja Morant, but this is, to me, it's kind of a cry for help. This kid is clearly troubled in some way, shape, or form. He's willing to throw away literally hundreds of millions of dollars to look cool or portray a character on IG Live and social media. There's issues there. Hopefully, he gets the help he needs. That being said, that doesn't excuse the actions because they're
Yeah.
inexcusable. NBA has to send a strong message here. This is the kid that they want to be a face of the franchise, and and the other thing, JJ Redick getting grief for. I also tweeted a little bit about it as well. The hypocrisy and the incongruence between elected officials and politicians sending out Christmas cards with weapons of war,
Yep.
AK-15s, and we won't get too deep into that, but there's no denying the hypocrisy there. But again, all that being said, as far as the NBA in particular, they have to address this. They have to address it strongly. I think 40 games, 30 games, 25 games, 25 to 50 games, somewhere in that range is what we're looking at, I would assume.
Yeah, I think something north of 20 to 25 has to be the line here. If you gave him 8 the first time,
Yeah,
and I understand where JJ Redick and other pundits and people commenting on this are saying. I understand the dichotomy. I understand the racial dynamics that come with this as well. I do think that what concerns me about so much of the attention on the hypocrisies is the lack of concern for Ja's safety with what he's doing. Like, what I keep hearing is so many people being like, well, if he did nothing illegal, why is he getting in trouble? And I'm like, why are people so concerned about him getting in trouble? I'm concerned about him saving his life. I'm concerned about how he's going to save other people's lives potentially if he's being so cavalier with firearms. And if the way to get to him is to say, hey, you got to sit down and we're going to take away some money and take away some gains from you in order to understand the brevity of what he's actually doing, then that's great, because it may actually save some lives. It may save his own life. It may save his own career.
The best piece of advice I heard was a caller who called into NBA radio, the morning show, and said, don't go to rehab and all that stuff is great. Have Ja Morant spend a month with Jason Williams, not the white chocolate, the former net Jason Williams, who shot his limo driver. Obviously ended his life, ended Williams' career. That's the type of thing when you mess around with guns. The vast majority of casualties are accidental. In terms of when you're with friends and things along those lines. All that considered. It's clear Morant, to your point, just doesn't understand the ramifications of messing, and it's silly, ignorant stuff, and it's dangerous.
Yeah, and we could say, well, what if you don't know the guns were loaded? All right, it's all right. Well, so what if someone sees you in a car waving a gun? What if it's a cop who sees you waving a gun? How do you know that you don't have a cop that maybe has a quick trigger and wants to maybe rectify a situation? How do you know you're not bringing maybe bad elements into your life, into your crew's life, with how you're playing around in public with guns? Like, that doesn't bring anything positive. So that's the concern I have, and I understand the hypocrisies, but I think that a lot of people are missing the boat when it comes to why Ja has to serve a long suspension in my eyes, and he has to see the ramification of his actions through some form of strong punishment. I want to wrap the show quickly talking about this important offseason the Knicks have, with at least one Eastern Conference GM thinking that the team could be willing to move on from its defensive anchor in order to land a coveted star. So the NBA exec talked to NBA writer Sean Devaney of Heavy.com. He says that the Knicks could use Mitchell Robinson as an asset in a bigger trade. The GM said they have felt out the market on him because he is an old school kind of center, good rim protector and rebounder, but he does not want to shoot past 3 or 4 feet, and he's not much of a passer. The Bulls have some interest, but it's doubtful that would come back up. Dallas too, but again, there are no pieces that match up. There's not much of a market there for him, so he is their guy. They could move him along if it is part of a bigger package, though. So Mitch is heading into the second year of a 4-year, $60 million contract that he signed this past offseason. Tommy, do you think the Knicks will look or should look to shop Mitchell Robinson this offseason?
Yeah, I don't think I wouldn't prioritize it. I think Mitch Robinson is relatively adequately paid. I think he's
Yeah,
when he's healthy and playing well. He's obviously a major contributor. We saw his what he brings to the table in the Cleveland series when he played arguably the best basketball of his career, and then we saw the flip side when Bam Adebayo thoroughly outplayed him in the Miami series. And as noted, which is kind of what we all know. There's he's a limited kind of lane in terms of how he can impact the game. The fact that his free throw shooting continues to get worse 3, 4,
yeah.
5 years into his career, obviously a concern. The health injuries, the durability concerns are still there. If anything, you might be selling high now because he's able to get through a regular season relatively unscathed. It seems like the next 2 month injuries around the corner with
I know.
Mitch Rob at all times. The flip side of the coin is, you know what you're getting in him. He fits in the current roster construct because you never have to run plays for him. The best offensive rebounder in the league. There's solid, terrific value there in that specific skill. So, but there's also guys comparable to him, Nick Claxton and Jared Allen and Clint Capella. And these guys are, I don't want to say he's imminently replaceable, but you can get the kind of those high flying athletic centers. They're out there, maybe not in the same class as Mitch Rob, but there's that type of thing as well.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think that it's not something that I would be saying, hey, we got to get him out of New York. Like you can't win with Mitchell Robinson. Like
Right.
I mean, he helped them. He was one of the most important players in that first series against Cleveland. His ability to
Yep.
dominate the class and dominate Jared Allen was one of the reasons why the Knicks were able to dominate the Cleveland Cavaliers. So I'm not necessarily looking to shop Mitchell Robinson. I do think that some of his deficiencies, were clear as day in that series against the Miami Heat. The fact that you don't have a five that can stretch the floor was that
Right.
allowing the Heat to clog the paint and play a lot of zone. The fact that he's such a bad free throw shooter at times allowed the Heat to just foul him endlessly in the series to avoid easy baskets. So he has some holes in his game. He has some weaknesses, and I think that's something that the Knicks will have to consider when they come into this offseason. They say, hey, when we look at other options, is there a better fit potentially at the five, even if we lose a little bit of defense, even if we lose a little bit of rebounding, but maybe we get a more reliable scorer, a more reliable floor spacer. Like I think all of these things are on the table, but I think Mitch played too well in that Cleveland series to just say, okay, it's time for him to get out of here. Now, if you're telling me you have a clear option that is a better option, then I would have no problem getting rid of him. But right now, I would say that I would pump the brakes on necessarily shopping Mr. Robinson, if that makes sense.
Agreed. There's no reason you don't have to be motivated to do it. But the other thing to keep in mind is Isaiah Hartenstein can fill in at center as well. So there's
Yeah.
other options there as well.
And that's kind of why I think I can see the Knicks looking around and saying, hey, this GM said that there really is a market for Mitch, which is not that surprising, but that maybe he could be an asset in a trade for a star. I can see the Knicks doing that. I can see the Knicks saying, hey, Isaiah Hartenstein showed that he could do the job as a starting center. If you do get a star in here, and you downgrade slightly with Isaiah Hartenstein as your starter, and maybe Jericho Sims comes in, now he's your backup.
Right.
I can see the Knicks doing that. And I think that's why this Eastern Conference GM said what he said. And that's something I think is on the table. But I do think that if you're talking about just saying, hey, who wants Mitchell Robinson? What can we get for him? I think that the Knicks, I wouldn't necessarily be willing to just throw that out there. That would be a different conversation.
Agreed.
I think that's a good place to leave it, though. So that's going to do it for this edition of Orange and Blue Bloods. Thank you guys so much for checking us out. Of course, this is a WFAN Audacy original, a podcast you can get wherever you get your podcasts, including the free Audacy app. Make sure you hit the auto download feature on your streaming service to get these episodes every time we drop. We'll have more episodes for you guys next week, so make sure you hit that auto download feature to know when we release those episodes. And also be sure to check us out on YouTube. You can check us on the Audacy Sports and the WFAN channel. Tommy, let people know where they can find you.
At Tommy Beer on Twitter.
You can find me, EJ_Stewart on Twitter, Action EJ on Instagram and TikTok. Thank you guys again so much for checking us out. For Tommy, I'm EJ. Take it easy, guys. Peace. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please don't forget to give it a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel for more content like this. If you want to see more of our videos, be sure to check out our playlist and let us know what you think in the comments below.
Also, don't forget to follow us on social media to stay up to date on our latest podcast ventures. Links will be in the descriptions. And as always, thanks for watching, and we will see you in our next video.